Okay, this is Unit 4 Study Guide, Objective 2. When you see a problem like this where it's a binomial times another binomial, you'll use one of two methods. You can do it via the box method, or you can do it the distributive method. I will show you both. If you choose one way over the other, then you can fast forward or skip to the one that you like. I'm going to start each one with the box method, and then I will show you the alternate method. Feel free to skip over any of those. Alright, for the box method, you see that you have a binomial times a binomial. So that's a 2 by 2 box that we're going to draw. Now your box does not have to be perfect, and I'm sorry mine came out so sloppy. I'll start by writing your first parentheses down the side. Make sure you keep the negative with the 2. And you'll write your second one on the top. So the x will go here, and the plus 4 will go here. Okay? We'll multiply 3x times x. Well, 3 times 1 is 3, and then we have 1x here and 1x there, makes 2 x's in the box. 3 times positive 4 is positive 12. We have 1x here and no x there, so there's another x. We have negative 2 times an x here, which is negative 2, and then there's an x. And then notice how neither of these have an x, so you'll do negative 2 times positive 4, which is negative 8. And then we will always have a peanut that comes right here. This is our like term peanut. We always want to check, see how there's just an x and just an x. So that means these are like terms. And we'll bring down the very first box. And then 12 minus 2, or negative 2 plus 12, is positive 10. And then bring down your x. We do not put a square here because when we add, we do not add exponents. Only when we multiply do we add exponents. And then you'll drop down the negative 8. Okay? And this becomes our final answer. So you can now skip to the next question, because I'm going to show you the distributive way. So I'm just writing down the problem again. Okay? So a distributive way, you want to take the first term and multiply it to each thing inside the second parentheses. So you got 3x times x, which is 3x squared. 3x times positive 4, which is positive 12x. And then we'll take the negative 2 and we'll distribute it to everything inside there. Make sure you include the sign. Negative 2 times x is negative 2x. And negative 2 times positive 4 is negative 8. Notice how our middle here has like terms. Okay? And so we'll bring it down. 3x squared will come down. 12x's minus 2x's equals 10. 12 minus 2 is positive 10x. And then the negative 8 has nothing to combine with, so it will drop. And notice how we have the same answer for both questions. So it does not matter which way you choose. Okay, looking at question number 6, we will solve it first by doing the box method because we have a binomial times another binomial. Be careful, because sometimes when we mix them up, there's not always a times here. Sometimes we put a plus, sometimes we put a minus, so you have to be mindful and look to see which one we're doing. So we're going to draw a box. Okay, and this is a 2 by 2 because it's 2 terms here, 2 terms, 2 by 2. Okay, so I'm going to write my first polynomial down the left side. And then I'm going to write my second polynomial across the top. Now, just because it has this extra y in here doesn't change what we actually do. 4 times 2 is 8. And then we have 1x here, and 1x here makes 2x's. We have 4 times, and this is understood, negative 1, which is negative 4. We have 1x here, and there's none here, so we have 1x. We have 1y here, and no y's here, so we still have 1y. Okay? Positive 3 times 2 is positive 6. There's 1x here, so there's 1x there. There's 1x here, 1y, and this doesn't have a y, so there's still just 1y. There's 3 times negative 1 is negative 3. Notice how none of them have an x, so there's no x here, but they do both have a y. That's 1y plus 1y, which makes 2 y's. Okay? So now we look to see if we have any like terms, and we always look at our peanuts. Okay? Notice how 8x squared doesn't, and then negative 3y squared doesn't. But this has an x and this has a y. This has an x and a y. So you have 6xy's minus 4xy's, which is positive 2xy's. Okay? And that's our answer. So you can now skip, if you do the box method, to the next question, because I'm going to do it the distributive way. Okay? So, if you like the distributive method, this is where we're going to do yours. So I'm going to take the 4x and I'm going to distribute it to the 2x, so you get 8x squared. I'm then going to take the 4x and distribute it to the negative y. 4 times negative 1 is negative 4. There's an x and there's a y. Okay? Notice how I'm not putting a plus sign or anything between the x and the y because they're multiplying, so you'll keep it multiplying here. Okay? Then we'll take this positive 3 and we'll multiply it to the positive 2x here, which is positive 6. And then you have an x and a y multiplying together, which is just an x and a y. We can't do anything with those. Okay? And then we'll take the positive 3 and multiply it to the negative 1y, which is negative 3. And then we have 1y plus another y, so we have 2y's. Okay? And so you'll notice that our middle has an x and a y for both of them. Okay? And you'll get 8x squared, negative 4 plus 6, or 6 minus 4 is positive 2xy. And then the negative 3y squared will come down. And that's the final answer. Okay? Alright, so this question gets a lot of people because they think that you want to distribute the square, because we did that in the previous section. However, we have this subtraction sign in the middle, which is different than what we had prior to this question, so we cannot just distribute the square. This actually means that we have x minus 3 times x minus 3. Just like if we had x squared, that really means x times x. Okay? So all we're doing is we have this parenthesis squared, we write it like this. Now it's just the box method or the distributive method like you had in the previous two questions. Okay? So you write down x and minus 3, you have x and minus 3, and notice how the length and the width are the same, like all squares have, all sides are the same. So you do x times x, you get x squared, x times negative 3, which is negative 3x, and negative 3 times x, which is negative 3x, and then negative 3 times negative 3 is positive 9. Okay? We look at our like term peanut here, see if we do x and an x, yes, like term, so you get x squared, negative 3, and that's a plus, a negative 3 is negative 6x, and then plus 9. Okay, and that's our final answer. If you do it the distributive way, now is your time. Take x, and we're going to multiply it by the other x, and so you get x squared. Take the x, you multiply it by the negative 3, you get negative 3x. Take this negative 3, multiply it by the x, you get negative 3x again. Negative 3 times negative 3, positive 9. You'll notice that we have a like term set right here. So our final answer will be x squared, negative 3 minus 3, same sign, so we add, so you get 6, and they're both negative, so technically it stays in negative, okay? Because when we add, that's how it works. And then the plus 9 comes down, and notice how we get the same answer for both sections. So looking at this, now we have a binomial times a trinomial. Same methods, we're going to use the box method or the distributive method, but now we have a 2 by 3. So we're going to go 2 down and 3 across. Okay? Okay? So I'm going to write my first one here just like I would any other time. And then I'm going to write my second one here. Okay? So now, 2 times 3 is 6. I have 2 x's here and 1 here, which makes 3 in here. 2 times 4 is positive 8. We have an x here and an x here, so that's 1 plus 1, which is 2. And then I have 2 times negative 1, which is negative 2. I have 1x here and none here, which makes 1 inside here. Notice how it goes. 3, 2, 1. Okay? It'll always work like that. Okay? Negative 1 times 3 is negative 3. And then there's 2 x's here and none here. So there's just 2 in all inside. Negative 1 times 4 is negative 4. And then just bring down the x. Negative 1 times negative 1 is positive 1. Make sure you don't make the mistake of making it a 2. We are multiplying, and 1 times 1 is 1. Okay? Now we look to see if we have any like terms, and we always look in our diagonal peanut to see if we have them. Okay? So in here, we do have like terms. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring down that top corner, because the corners actually never have like terms. Okay? And then looking at this, we have negative 3x squared plus 5x squared, or 8 minus 3, and that is positive 5x squared. Okay? And then we'll look at this other peanut that we have. We have 2 peanuts now. Negative 4 and negative 2, they are like terms. Negative 4 plus negative 2 are they're the same sign, so we add the numbers, you get negative 6x. It's negative because the 4 is bigger and it's negative. And then our plus 1 obviously came down a minute ago. So that's what it becomes. You can now skip ahead or move to the next video for your next section of your study guide if you do the box method, because I'm doing the distributive method now. Okay, so we'll take this 2x and we'll distribute it to each thing inside here. Okay, 2 times 3 is 6. And we have 1x here and 2 there, which makes 3 in all. Then I'll do 2 times 4, which is positive 8. We have 1x and another 1x. 1 plus 1 makes 2. And 2 times negative 1 is negative 2. There's 1x and no x, so there's just 1x between the two of them. Then I'll do negative 1 times 3x, which is negative 3. And then there's 2 x's here and none there, which makes 2. Then we do negative 1 times 4x, which is negative 4. And then the 1x between them. Okay? And then negative 1 times negative 1 is positive 1. Try not to make the mistake of going negative 1 minus 1 and getting negative 2, because we are multiplying these numbers here. Okay? So now we gotta look for our like terms. X to the third, we don't have any more of those, so it can just drop down. So then we look, okay, x squared, so we have like terms. Okay, if you have 8x squared minus 3x squared, you have positive 5x squared. So then you look negative 2x, oh, and there's a negative 4. These are like terms. So you have negative 2 minus 4, they're the same sign, so we'll add the numbers and get a 6. 4 is bigger, it's negative, so we take the negative. Okay? And then lastly, we have this plus 1. It doesn't have a like term, so it comes down, and this becomes our final answer. Notice how it goes 3, 2, 1, none for the x's. Okay? There's 3 x's, 2 x's, 1 x, no x. And that's the final question for Objective 2. Please move on to the next video.